All right, hello. I just went out and shot some photos on the iPhone 15 Pro, as well as my DSLR camera, the Canon EOS Rebel SL2. And I use both 24 and 35 millimeter for both cameras. As you may know, the 24 millimeter on the iPhone will shoot the 48 megapixel photos, while the 35 will shoot the 24 megapixel photos because it's that sort of kind of digital crop, but not exactly. I hate to get into that right now, but there is some distortion differences between these two, which kind of proves that it's not just a sensor crop, even though it kind of is. It's like a mix of a sensor crop and some other magic going on there. But for now, let's just focus on 24 megapixel, 35 millimeter, 24 millimeter and 35 millimeter, and main differences between the iPhone and the DSLR images. So I just pulled this up. I haven't done any pixel peeping or whatnot yet. We'll just look at the 24 millimeter right here, and then we'll make a comparison with one of the DSLR shots. So the DSLR shots are the things with the 2 stars. Everything that's not starred we'll get into later. So let's see. I just want... I have not memorized how to do the reference view in the in Lightroom yet. So let's just make sure that we're looking at the right ones. All right. So we have our iPhone image on the left, and we have the DSLR on the right. Immediately, I'm not sure why this is, but why the heck are they different aspect ratios? Are they really different aspect ratios? They totally are. Let me look at my camera. Why is that a thing? I shouldn't be shooting at any... I should be shooting at 3x4 for both, right? Isn't that the standard? I'm currently looking at my DSLR camera settings. I was not expecting to see this. Right. Image quality is raw on mine, 6000 by 4000. Okay. So that's correct there. My iPhone isn't... No, the iPhone's more vertical. What the heck? They're different aspect ratios. I didn't know that was a thing. I really didn't know that was a thing. Huh. Okay, well, so the iPhone doesn't use a standard aspect ratio, I guess. Alright, well, there's the first difference. Let's zoom in and look at the quality. So, iPhone on the left, DSLR image on the right. And, right off the bat... So I focused in on, like, the beard of the gnome right here. And a little background. I guess this is why I was having so much trouble framing. On the DSLR, right? This is a Rebel SL2. It's a crop sensor camera, okay, which is already 1,000 times bigger than a sensor that you get on any smartphone ever, right? So I was having a lot of trouble with framing. Aspect ratio could have been one thing happening, but what I tried to do, I shot on the iPhone first because I thought it would be easier to frame, to like reference an iPhone photo when I was shooting on the DSLR, rather than shooting on the DSLR first and then referencing the DSLR photo so I could frame the iPhone. I tried that before I made these shots and it was just way too difficult, so I shot on the iPhone first and then tried to mimic the iPhone shot on the DSLR second. So I was able to capture the entire chair and everything. But obviously there was a lot of other things going on. I had to move the tripod around a lot to frame these two relatively the same. And I was not expecting to see the aspect ratio differences going on. So that's why, yeah, the gnome on the iPhone may appear way larger than the gnome on the DSLR, even though I tried my best to match the framing as much as I possibly could. What it appears is that the DSLR image, and I should also mention, so I go all over the place all the time. The the DSLR is a crop sensor, right? I made sure to use an EFS mount lens. So this is a stock lens that comes with the camera that I'm using on the DSLR, right? That's really important because if I were to use an EF lens on a crop sensor Canon camera, it would magnify the image by, say, like 1.2 or 1.3 times. So the 24 megapixel wouldn't be a real 24 megapixel. It would have been a 35. I mean, no, a 24 millimeter would have been a real 24 millimeter, would have been a 35 millimeter. So I made sure to use a lens that would capture the actual 24 millimeter and not magnify it. Yet, it's still, like, compared to the iPhone image, it looks way more telephoto on the DSLR image. And you know it's more telephoto because, I mean, the chair isn't as distorted on the DSLR photo as it is on the iPhone photo. And you can see a lot less of the background on the DSLR image than you can on the iPhone. It's almost like the iPhone shooting the wide angle and the DSLR shooting the telephoto, even though they're both in 24 millimeter. Yet the gnome appears way larger in the iPhone image than it does in the DSLR image. So this is really interesting. Like, I want to believe that the DSLR is like the proper 24 millimeter because, I mean, it kind of is. I mean, it's shooting on a standard sensor size and it's shooting on a standard lens. The DSLR image is more accurate as far as the optics goes. I don't know what's happening over here on the iPhone when I'm looking at it in comparison. And looking at quality and whatnot, let's go to 300%. Okay, so it does appear that the iPhone, at least in closer distance, does have the more image quality because it is shooting, I mean, double the resolution. Does it look double the resolution? Maybe. Sure. iPhone has a little bit more poppy colors. Okay, that's all cool and dandy. Let's look at background details. I'm seeing what appears to be more detail in the backgrounds on the DSLR image. Let's look at the ground itself. Wow, a lot more detail in the DSLR image. I don't even know what's going on the iPhone. Though that could be because of the weird optics, the iPhone is zoomed in closer. Therefore, let's go to 100% and then look at it. Let's go to 300% on this split right here. All right, so it's like kind of hit and miss. Nothing too alarming to report here. I mean, I like DSLR image more, just because it looks correct. As far as detail goes, let's go to 100%. Say I wanted to zoom in. No, let's not go there. Let's go to 50% crop. Okay, I would. It's like, which image would I take in this case? I guess I would take the iPhone image if I was zoomed in 50%. If I was zoomed in 100%. I would take the DSLR image if I was at fit. I would also take in the DSLR image. So it depends on how you're gonna present this to your audience, I guess. But these are just really interesting differences in the image right here. Wow, I really don't know exactly what to say here. It's just, the iPhone image is just weird. Like, it's higher detail where it's focused at, but where it's not focused, it falls apart. And it has a whole different aspect ratio, and there's just it's almost wide angle compared to the DSLR image. let's look at the iPhone image as if it was in the right color space and see if that changes anything at all. Let's make sure we select everything, select the iPhone image, and what Apple does, they embed this thing called the ProRaw, right? Like ProRaw isn't just an image format, it's also an effect that applies to the image, right? So what you're seeing is the iPhone image with this Apple ProRaw effect on it. It's still a DNG file. You still have a lot of push and pull potential when it comes to editing and getting like all the different levels of light on it. And as is, it does a pretty good job at giving you that high dynamic range that you want, right? But let's go ahead and choose Adobe Color. This is a standard color profile that applies to, you know, most any raw image you take. So we'll go back to DSLR. It's Adobe Color. That's just the way it comes, right? Apple, it comes as Apple ProRaw. It gives a little slider to just the effect up and down, which is a little bit weird. That shows it is an effect, all right? Let's go to Adobe Color, remove all of that effect, and see what happens. Okay, this doesn't look bad. This looks pretty good. Sometimes it could crush those midtones to where you could barely see anything in the mids, but you could still see the highlights okay. In this case, it did a pretty good job at, you know, really capturing those midtones. So let's do a comparison. All right, so we're comparing the iPhone and the DSLR image, and it looks really good, actually. I took some other images, but I didn't include them in this review because I was using the full frame lens on the crop sensor camera, and so that wouldn't have been a very accurate review. And it crushed those mids like a ton to where I had to really work hard to bring those mids up without blowing out the highlights. But in this case, it caught it properly, like not bad at all. Let's go ahead and look at the 35 mils. So we're on 35 millimeter on the iPhone, right? And then let's go 35 mil on the DSLR. This is that weird Lightroom thing. I never know how to make this accurate. Okay, I think we're good. Yeah, 35 mil on the iPhone, 35 mil on the chair. And let's zoom into this. So these are two 24 megapixel images. We're no longer dealing with 48 megapixel in one image on the iPhone image and 24 on the DSLR. These are both going to be the 24 megapixel image. All right, so looking at these two, yeah, the iPhone appears a lot more sharp in most everything. Now let's go ahead and switch the Apple image to a Adobe Color. So this is as the image should actually come out of the iPhone, but you know, Apple put that profile on it. So I would just remove the profile. We'll go back to our comparison. Okay, so the sharpness went down a little bit on the iPhone, but it's still quite sharp compared to the DSLR image. Colors are a bit more poppy. Okay, not bad. Let's look at the background. Yeah, I got a little bit more detail in the background, but depending on who you are, that may or may not be a good thing. Because, you know, Apple has that super small sensor, so it's doing a little bit of trickery to make the bokeh. This is where that really shines, because you can tell this is a smaller sensor because it's not blowing out that background as much as the crop sensor on the DSLR is. But I mean, all around, not a bad job by the iPhone on the 35 mil or the 1.5x setting on the camera app. Like, I actually kind of like this image on the iPhone. But of course, you know, the DSLR, I mean, you blow up the DSLR image, it's going to look amazing. But just right out the box, even with the profile that they automatically apply it removed, I'm quite impressed by the iPhone image. Yeah, it just has more consistent focus throughout the image too. So really, I mean, like if Apple had, you know, a larger sensor in their phones, they could do some really cool things. Sensors are still pretty small. That's why there's multiple cameras, so they can focus on different things and make that whole portrait effect and make it mimic a larger sensor camera. So they're taking a step in the right direction with the megapixel, but they have to increase that sensor size to really get that feel, you know? Let's look at one other thing. As you can see, I have these sets of 3 images right here. These are multiple exposures that I'm going to merge into an HDR image. So let's go ahead and make sure we just have one image selected. We'll select these 3 and we'll do photo merge HDR. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to make the HDR image, right? I'll actually not create a stack this time. So this is the 24mm image. We'll make the HDR, just give it a second. All right, here it is. So this is that multiple exposure HDR image. There is a ton of light information here, okay? It's basically a more manual way of taking, you know, an HDR. It's the real way of taking an HDR image. You're capturing 3 different images at 3 different like exposures, like levels of light. I'm not trying to. I don't know what words are trying to come out of my head right now. You're taking 3 different exposures, taking the dark one, a medium one, regular one, and then like you're capturing a little bit of light, a lot of light, and then like no light at all, right? So you can put them all together, and you can have like all the light information you could ever want. And they're also like super high quality images too. So what I'm gonna do, we're gonna take the exposure, right? And we're just gonna drop it a whole bunch, right? We're gonna drop it to, what is that? -3.8. We'll drop it to like -4. Okay? We're just gonna pay attention to these highlighted areas right here. Let's do the same on the 24 megapixel on the iPhone. I've already removed the Apple ProRaw thing, and we'll go -4 here. Now let's do a comparison between these two. All right, so this time we got the DSLR on the left and we have the iPhone image on the right. And at -4, there's quite a bit more info on the DSLR image. Let's go ahead and make them brighter. Let's go like, yeah, like right there. What is that? +1. We'll go +2 on the DSLR. And then we'll go +2 on the iPhone. This is probably a better way to compare them anyway. We got library, comparison. All right, let me zoom out and make sure I'm on the right one. All right, iPhone on the left, DSLR on the right. Zoom in. You know what? Not bad on the iPhone. That's really interesting. So that is very interesting. I was expecting... I just got proven wrong. I was expecting the iPhone to just be completely blown out in every single way possible, but the iPhone's actually holding up very well with the HDR. And this is just one image I had to take, and I had to take 3 images and combine them together. I did on here, though. Not bad, actually. That is very surprising. Okay, well, I was gonna say, yeah, like the DSLR is way better with the HDR. I really don't know what to say. It's gonna be so hard to prove it otherwise. I would have to make a whole nother video about a low light example, because I shot this in daylight, right? So the iPhone's gonna do whatever it wants in daylight. The DSLR has the capability of, you know, leaving its shutter open for way longer, okay? Unless you download some application, Lord knows what app you're gonna download to do it on the iPhone to shoot like a real long exposure. The DSLR, I can tell it to leave its shutter open for minutes at a time if I want to, and capture as much light as I want. And it's a full, you know, crop sensor, full frame sensor. Like I can tell the DSLR to do exactly what I needed to do. iPhone, it's a lot harder to do that. I would, oh man, I would have to make a whole nother video on how the low light performance works. At least, you know, with the base camera. I don't even know what I'm going to download to do what I would do on a DSLR on the iPhone. But in this case, the iPhone does kind of win as far as HDR performance goes. At least outdoors, abundance of light. Indoors, I don't think it would win. I think the DSLR would run circles around the iPhone when it comes to HDR performance indoors. Just because, you know, just because I can control the shutter and yeah, I have full control of the iris. Well, I'm sorry if this video was just a big jumble of photo mess. I hope y'all learned something out of this. I think this proves that at least for outdoor performance, the iPhone really holds up to a real DSLR. It all kind of comes down to, like, you know, what you're going to use it for. I mean, I'm just taking pictures in my backyard, but if you're shooting a wedding, you probably don't want to bring an iPhone. Maybe as a B camera, but I mean, they'll probably look at you weird if you're showing up there to paying you like $1,200 for a wedding and you're shooting with an iPhone. You know, which any of their family members can do. And, you know, I mean, like, but in my casual case, I don't shoot professionally anymore. So there's really no reason for me to, like, even have a DSLR camera if I'm just, like, shooting casually. In this case, outdoors in my backyard or whatever. I'm going to make another video for indoor performance. Say you're shooting indoors, you have limited light, and your iPhone can't do all this magical trickery to make it actually kind of better than the DSLR. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I'll be a future video. This video's already gone on long enough. My brain hurts. Thanks for watching. If you got any kind of value out of this video, I really appreciate it. Yeah. Bye.